Have you ever wondered why you feel empty in your own home? Why is it that more and more successful men, those who have made it in business, in life, in the eyes of society, are coming home each night only to feel hollow in the very space they were told would complete them? Think of the man with a corner office, 2 children in a good school, a wife who posts Instagram photos of family vacations, and a driveway lined with evidence of achievement. But when the lights go out and the silence returns, he sits in the kitchen long after everyone's asleep, wondering, what part of me did I trade for all of this? It's not failure that haunts him. It's the slow realization that his life was not truly chosen, but assigned. You might think this is just modern stress. You might say, well, marriage is hard for everyone, but statistics reveal something more profound. Divorce rates initiated by women hover around 70% in the West. Meanwhile, countless married men report emotional numbness, quiet despair, and a sense of psychological exile in their own homes. They stay, they provide, they endure, but they're not really alive. Nietzsche, the prophet of raw truth, would not have been surprised. Over a century ago, he warned of a creeping disease in the soul of man, what he called moral slavery, a condition in which the strong no longer dare to live by their strength because they've been taught to feel guilty for it. In a society that worships obedience over authenticity, sacrifice over self-creation, many men unknowingly sign their freedom away at the altar of being good husbands. The modern marriage, Nietzsche might argue, has become a sacred cage. It asks men to love, to provide, to protect, but in doing so, it often demands the slow erasure of the primal fire within them. Not because women are malicious, not because love is a lie, but because the institution has been shaped by ideals that quietly reward submission and punish inner rebellion. This isn't just about romance, this is about identity. And if we want to understand why modern relationships feel so heavy, so unbalanced, we have to start by asking, what chains are we mistaking for love? It begins with a whisper, subtle, almost imperceptible. You find yourself apologizing for wanting time alone. You suppress an opinion to keep the peace. You smile when you feel nothing. Day by day, you offer pieces of your soul to the shrine of harmony until the reflection staring back at you becomes unrecognizable. Nietzsche saw this quiet surrender long before our age of hashtags and hallmark vows. In his boldest works, he described a force he called slave morality, a system of values crafted not by the powerful, but by the powerless. A morality born out of fear, not freedom. In Nietzsche's eyes, ancient societies once revered strength, boldness, and will. But over time, these virtues were demonized by the weak who could not compete. So they created a new system, one that praised humility, obedience, and self-denial. They told the strong it is righteous to kneel. And so the lion learned to purr. This shift wasn't just philosophical, it was deeply psychological. Nietzsche believed that when you internalize values that are not your own, you are no longer free. You become a domesticated version of yourself, existing within parameters set by others. You might be applauded by society, loved by your family, even envied by your peers, but inside your will has been tamed. Nowhere is this more evident than in modern marriage. The institution has become in many cases a moral contract disguised as romance. A man no longer marries just for love. He marries to be acceptable, to be complete, to be seen as mature, settled, respectable. These are not inherently bad things. But when these ideals come at the cost of one's wildness, when becoming a husband means ceasing to be a man of his own making, that is the beginning of moral slavery. Imagine a man who deep down longs to travel, to create, to build something wild and unreasonable, but he tells himself that's for boys. I have responsibilities now. And so he shrinks, not because anyone forced him, but because he believes shrinking is noble. This is what Nietzsche raged against. Not love, not family, but the unexamined values that shape us. He did not ask men to abandon their families. He asked them to question the cages they willingly walk into, and to discern whether their lives are an authentic expression of their will or a performance scripted by cultural expectation. Real freedom for Nietzsche is not doing whatever you want. It's becoming who you are. But that journey often requires burning down the idols you were taught to worship. Comfort, approval, acceptance, and confronting the uncomfortable truth that not all peace is virtuous and not all sacrifice is noble. So we must ask, have we mistaken tameness for love, obedience for honor, self-erasure for devotion? Or worse, have we called our own silence strength? They tell you love is freedom, that in marriage you find your partner, your mirror, your refuge, but they rarely talk about the slow accumulation of invisible expectations. Expectations so subtle, so sacred, you dare not question them. In the modern marriage, especially for men, freedom often ends not with a crash, but with a compromise. You are expected to be the rock, the unshakable foundation upon which everyone else can crumble. You are told that real men don't complain, they provide. You are the provider, the protector, the planner. But you must also be emotionally present, tender, open, just enough to be considered in touch, but never so vulnerable that you burden anyone. You must speak, but only when asked. Feel, but only what's acceptable. Desire, but only within pre-approved parameters. And above all, you must not fail. These aren't chains forged by law or religion anymore. These are chains of cultural sanctification made not of iron, but of praise. You're not told to sacrifice your dreams, you're applauded for it. You're not ordered to silence your anger, you're thanked for your emotional maturity. Every act of quiet self-erasure earns you another gold star, until one day you're buried under medals and no one remembers the man beneath them. Think of the man who works 12 hours a day, not because he wants to, but because he believes that's what a real husband does. He doesn't complain because that's what strength looks like. But inside he's fraying. His hobbies are gone. His friendships faded. His inner world now consists of schedules, bills, and the sacred ritual of pretending everything is fine. Or the man who wants to speak up in an argument but stops himself, because he's been trained to think, her feelings matter more. My anger is dangerous. My needs are less urgent. And over time, he doesn't just stay silent, he forgets how to even hear his own voice. This is what Nietzsche would call the death of the will. He warned us that society praises conformity dressed as virtue, that the lion is not tamed with whips, but with lullabies. In marriage, those lullabies sound like, don't be selfish, put the family first, a good man sacrifices. But Nietzsche would ask, what is the cost of that sacrifice? When you kill your instincts long enough, they stop trying to wake you. And here's the catch, women suffer from this too. But the system is especially cruel to men because their struggle is largely invisible. A woman who breaks free from a stifling marriage is often seen as courageous, reclaiming her voice. A man who does the same, he's called irresponsible, immature, even toxic, because society has written one role for him to endure. And if he questions that role, he's shamed, not by enemies, but by the people who love him. You're being distant. You're not trying hard enough. You've changed. Of course he's changed. He's trying to breathe. There's an emotional asymmetry here that's hard to name but deeply felt. Men are expected to be endlessly understanding, but rarely understood. To contain their rage but absorb everyone else's. To support but not need support. It's not that women are malicious, it's that the system hands them the language of emotion and hands men the burden of silence. So what does the modern man do? He performs. He plays the role of the good husband like a soldier playing dead, still moving, still smiling, still earning. But inside, he's just a ghost in a well-tailored suit. And here's the most brutal truth of all, he's praised for it. He's told he's a great man, a responsible adult, a real provider, but no one asks if he's happy, because we assume that a man who fulfills his duties should be content. But what if duty, when weaponized, becomes a prison? Nietzsche's voice thunders through the centuries. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But what if the why you're living for was handed to you, not born from you? In the end, the most insidious chains are the ones you're too proud to admit are hurting you. He wakes up on time. He brushes his teeth. He kisses his wife goodbye and commutes through the city like thousands of others, silent men in metal boxes. He responds to emails. He nods in meetings. He comes home, eats dinner, watches, a screen, goes to bed, then repeats. But something inside him is dying, not loudly, not with cries or rebellion, but in quiet, polite erosion. Like a canyon carved not by explosion, but by centuries of water. It's not dramatic enough to be noticed, but it is constant, and it is real. This man could be your boss, your father, your friend. Maybe he is you. He doesn't hate his life. That would be simpler. What he feels is more terrifying, a numbness so total even joy feels muted. The music he once loved now sounds like background noise. The hobbies that once lit him up now feel like chores. Even sex becomes mechanical, another duty to fulfill, another mask to wear. Nietzsche spoke of this state as a kind of spiritual suffocation, the slow dying of the will to power, that primal force within every human to expand, to create, to transcend. When that force is blocked, we don't explode. We implode. We retreat inward, our fire still burning but trapped under glass. Modern society calls it burnout, midlife crisis, or depression. But these are just labels. What they mask is a deeper truth. The man has lost his myth. He no longer sees himself as the hero of any story. He's become a background character in a life he built to please others, and still he shows up. He keeps the lights on, he makes the school runs, he says I'm fine every time someone asks, because he's been taught that speaking of pain is weakness, that breaking down is failure, that emotion is dangerous unless it is softly packaged. And so, like millions of others, he endures. You can see him in films, the father who drinks quietly, the executive who stares out the window too long, the man who after decades of devotion walks away from it all and is called selfish when in truth he was starving, or read it in anonymous confessions online. I have a wife and 3 kids. I love them, but I don't feel anything anymore. I provide everything and yet I feel invisible. I'm not allowed to be unhappy because everyone says I have the perfect life. This is the psychological exile of modern man, the prison of roles, the burden of unacknowledged despair. And Nietzsche warned us, when you betray your inner drive long enough, you don't just become unhappy, you become unrecognizable. You turn from a creator into a function, from a force of nature into a cog. And yet this isn't the end. Nietzsche did not mourn this state as final. He saw it as a prelude to transformation, like the caterpillar in the cocoon disassembled, liquefied, almost destroyed before it is remade. But for that metamorphosis to begin, a man must first see the cage, not resent it, not lash out blindly, just see it. Because when you name the thing that holds you, you begin to take its power away. There is a moment, quiet, terrifying, and sacred, when a man looks into the mirror and no longer sees a husband, a provider, or a father first. He sees a ghost. Not because he lacks love or value, but because he has forgotten the wild fire that once defined him. That moment is not the end. It is the beginning. Nietzsche, the philosopher of fire and chaos, would not weep for this man. He would not coddle him. He would look him in the eye and whisper what few dare to say. Good. You are finally ready to become something greater. This is the heart of Nietzsche's solution. Not escape, not regression, not rebellion, for its own sake, but transformation. He called this becoming the Übermensch, the overman, the one who transcends inherited values and forges a life that is wholly authentically his own. Not a better man, not a moral man, but a self-created man. To Nietzsche, this is not a luxury. It is the only path to freedom. The Übermensch does not reject love, but he refuses to be consumed by it. He does not abandon marriage, but he refuses to lose himself inside it. He loves not from obligation, but from overflow. He provides not because he is chained to duty, but because it aligns with his own will and strength. Every act is rooted in selfhood, not in fear of being unworthy. But how does a modern man, buried under decades of conditioning, rise? It begins with an act Nietzsche considered sacred, the re-evaluation of all values, a burning away of borrowed beliefs, a ruthless inventory of which parts of your life are true and which are merely inherited scripts. You begin by asking, is this belief mine, or was it given to me by my parents, church, movies, culture? Do I show up in my marriage because I want to, or because I'm afraid not to? If I had nothing to prove, what would I create with my life? These questions are knives. They cut deep, they expose, but only what's false will bleed. And then comes the forging. The Übermensch is not born from comfort. He is born from clarity and fire. Here's what that looks like in a marriage context. 1. Set boundaries without apology. You are not infinite. Your time, your energy, your mind, they need walls. A man without boundaries is not noble. He is a sponge soaked in resentment, wrung dry. You must say no. You must claim time alone. You must protect your inner life as fiercely as you protect your family. Not because you don't love them, but because you do. 2. Define success beyond the domestic frame. So many men collapse because their entire identity is wrapped around being a good husband or a good father. These are noble roles, but they are roles. You are more than that. Success must be something you define outside of your family, something unrelated to how well you perform your function. Whether it's building a legacy, writing a book, training your body, mastering a craft, you must have a reason to live that does not depend on someone else's approval. 3. Reconnect with your will. Nietzsche called it the will to power, not dominance over others, but the power to shape yourself. You've been shaped by expectations for years. Now shape yourself. Revisit the things you once loved but gave up. Make space for your instincts. Take risks again. Move toward what feels alive even if it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is your soul stretching back into form. 4. Speak your truth. Even if your voice trembles, you are taught silence is strength. But Nietzsche would tell you, suppressed truth corrodes the soul. You must speak, not just to be heard, but to know yourself. Say when you're angry. Say when you feel lost. Say what you believe even if it goes against the grain. A man who cannot speak truth to his partner will never speak it to the world. 5. Accept that rebirth requires death. To become the Übermensch, you must let the old self die, the pleasing self, the performative self, the obedient son, the fragile ego that needed applause. This is not cruelty. It is sacred violence, like a forest fire that clears dead wood for new growth. Nietzsche never promised this path would be painless. He promised it would be real, and in that reality you find something holy integrity, the unbroken wholeness of a man who no longer splits himself to meet expectations. This man may still be married, he may still be a father, but now he stands on solid ground. His love is not performance, his strength is not silence, his life is not borrowed. He is finally his own. Nietzsche once wrote, "You must become who you are, not who your wife wants, not who your father praised, not who society applauds, who you are underneath all of it. That journey will cost you. You may be misunderstood, you may be judged. You may lose people who only love the version of you that never said no, but you will gain yourself. And once you do, you will be able to give love not from depletion, but from abundance. Because a man who has found his fire does not burn others, he lights the way." You've played the role. You've checked the boxes. You've done what a good man is supposed to do. And yet, somewhere in the quiet corners of your mind, there is a voice, not loud, not angry, but persistent, a whisper that asks, "Is this really it?" That voice is not your enemy. It is your echo.
The echo of who you were before the world told you who to become. The echo of the boy who once dreamed wildly, the man who once believed in more. And no matter how far you've drifted from him, he has never abandoned you. He's just been waiting for you to listen. Nietzsche didn't write to destroy. He wrote to awaken. He saw a world asleep, men walking with dead eyes, souls sedated by duty, tradition, fear. And he dared to ask the question no one wanted to answer. What if we're not actually living, just performing? But he didn't stop at the wound. He gave us the cure. Reclaim your will. Create new values. Become the author of your own myth.
You don't need to burn your house down or run off into the mountains. You don't need to reject love or your children or the quiet beauty of devotion. But you do need to stop offering your soul like it's a tax for being loved. You are not meant to live as a shadow. You are not here to be tolerated. You are not born to be acceptable. You are here to burn with the fire of your own becoming. Because when you are truly alive, when you live from truth, not obligation, everything changes. Your love becomes deeper, not because it's dutiful, but because it's free. Your presence becomes powerful, not because it's expected, but because it's chosen. And the people around you, they feel it. They don't see a hollow man dragging himself through routines. They see a man who stands in his own gravity. So let me ask you, not as a stranger, but as a voice from the mirror, what have you traded for peace? What part of yourself have you buried to fit a mold? What truth have you silenced so that others might feel more comfortable in your marriage, in your daily life? What part of you has gone missing? And what would it mean to get it back? You see, we live in a culture obsessed with performance, but beneath the performance there is something sacred, something primal, something real. Nietzsche called it the will to power. You might call it your fire, your voice, your truth. It's time to stop apologizing for wanting more than survival. It's time to stop confusing silence with strength. It's time to stop dying with your potential still inside you. Live not as a perfect husband, but as a free man, because the world doesn't need more obedient providers. It needs men who are awake. And now I want to hear from you. In your marriage or in your relationships, what part of yourself have you sacrificed to be accepted? Leave a comment. Be honest. You're not alone. And if this message stirred something inside you, if you feel like someone finally said what you couldn't name, subscribe, share, and let's keep building this conversation, because we're not here to be tamed. We're here to remember who we are. If you've made it this far, then you know this wasn't just a video. It was a mirror. We've explored the silent suffering of men in modern marriages, the invisible chains shaped by expectation, and the deep call to reclaim what's been lost. Through Nietzsche's lens, we've not only exposed the system, we've ignited a path forward, a path of fire, truth, and transformation. Remember, you don't need permission to be whole. You don't need to earn your right to exist fully. The world may not understand the man who refuses to shrink, but that man becomes a lighthouse for others, still lost in the fog. So if this message awakens something in you, don't let it fade. Leave a comment below. Share your story. Speak the truth you've buried. And if you believe more men need to hear this, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and help build a movement of conscious, courageous men ready to live on their own terms. This isn't about rebellion. It's about returning to yourself. Because you were never meant to be a ghost. You were meant to burn.